Throughout the annals of warfare, commanders have sought the perfect weapon, the sword that never dulls, the fortress that cannot fall, the strategy that guarantees victory. But in the summer of 1462, an Ottoman army discovered something far more potent than steel or stone. They encountered a weapon forged not from metal, but from the darkest recesses of the human mind itself. What they witnessed on the outskirts of a small Wallachian capital would become legend, whispered in horror across continents for centuries to come. This is not merely a tale of violence, though violence saturates every chapter. Rather, it is the chronicle of how one man transformed suffering into strategy, terror into triumph, and in doing so, revealed truths about human nature that empires would rather forget. The name Vlad Vlad the Impaler, has echoed through history as a synonym for cruelty. Yet the story you're about to hear goes far deeper than simple savagery. Prepare yourself for an account that will challenge everything you believe about the limits of human endurance, the nature of power, and the terrible effectiveness of fear itself. Witnesses claimed the anguished cries carried across valleys for miles in every direction. The year, 1462, deep in summer's heat. Picture yourself as a soldier in the Ottoman ranks, the mightiest military force the world had ever assembled. Constantinople had fallen before your banners. Ancient kingdoms had crumbled beneath your advance. Now you march toward an insignificant territory called Wallachia, intent on crushing a rebellious prince. Victory seemed assured within mere days, perhaps a fortnight at most. Then an unfamiliar scent reaches your nostrils. Decay, putrefaction, and something else, something your mind struggles to identify. The column's pace slackens. The scouts ahead have ceased their forward movement entirely. As your company rounds the hillside approaching the capital, the landscape before you crystallizes into focus. A forest stretches toward the horizon. Yet these are no ordinary trees. They are human forms, 20,000 souls, your comrades and brothers in arms, suspended upon sharpened wooden stakes arranged in mathematical precision as far as vision permits. Weeks have passed since death claimed some, their flesh bloated and blackened by summer's merciless sun. Others still draw breath, their bodies writhing, their voices rising in endless agony. Your Sultan, the conqueror who brought the Byzantine Empire to its knees, surveys this landscape of torment. Without uttering a command, he wheels his mount around. The entire army follows. The invasion ends before a single sword is drawn. What manner of intellect conceives such a display? Here lies the element that should chill your blood. This wasn't the product of madness. This was deliberate calculation, methodical planning, and devastatingly successful execution. The legend of Vlad the Impaler that history has preserved? It barely scratches the surface. The authentic account reveals something far more disturbing. How a single individual weaponized human agony so masterfully that it altered the trajectory of empires. By this story's conclusion, you'll grasp why the genuine terror wasn't what he inflicted upon flesh, but rather what he accomplished within the realm of the mind. Let us begin with an inquiry rarely posed. What shatters a human soul so thoroughly that such capacity emerges? The calendar reads 1442. Vlad numbers only 11 years. His father, Vlad II Dracul, Vlad the Dragon, has concluded a bargain with powers beyond his control. Not metaphorical forces, but a tangible authority bearing a name. Sultan Mehmed II, ruler of the Ottoman domains. The arrangement carries brutal simplicity. Vlad II retains his Wallachian crown. The price? His two youngest sons, surrendered as hostages, living guarantees securing his continued allegiance. Young Vlad and his brother Radu are wrenched from their homeland, delivered into the Ottoman Empire's very heart. They aren't cast into dungeons as common prisoners, but received as honored guests within the palace compounds of Edirne and subsequently Adrianople. Fine garments adorn their bodies. They receive comprehensive education and rigorous military instruction. Turkish, Arabic, philosophy, and the Quran fill their days. On the surface, privilege seems to reign. Yet the historical record glosses over a darker truth. This wasn't education, it was psychological conditioning. Vlad spent his formative years, from 11 to 17, observing his captors perfect the mechanisms of empire. He studied how the Ottomans deployed fear as an instrument of governance. He witnessed executions staged not merely for punishment, but designed to traumatize entire populations into compliance. He absorbed the lesson that terror, applied with surgical precision, proved more potent than massed armies. Another realization took root: his complete powerlessness. While his younger brother Radu adapted, eventually forming genuine friendship with the Sultan's son Mehmed, Vlad remained unyielding. Ottoman court documents record frequent punishments for his defiance. Some chronicles suggest beatings, perhaps torture. The precise details have vanished into history's shadows, but this remains certain: something fundamental fractured within him during those years. Or perhaps, more accurately, something crystallized into diamond-hard resolve. He developed what contemporary psychologists might diagnose as acute persecution complex married to obsessive control compulsion. Yet he channeled these impulses with purpose. Every punishment endured became a lesson studied. Every torture technique witnessed was committed to memory. Piece by piece, he constructed a mental armory. 1448 arrived. After 6 years of captivity, Vlad returned to Wallachia at 17. 2 months later, assassins loyal to rival boyars, the nobility who played both Ottoman and Hungarian powers against each other, murdered his father. His elder brother Mircea suffered burial alive. Vlad stood alone, encircled by enemies, supported by none. Here the narrative takes its fateful turn. He didn't merely hunger for vengeance. He intended to remake the world according to the blueprint of his trauma. Everything the Ottomans had taught him regarding terror would be refined, perfected, evolved into something they themselves had never imagined. But patience came first. 6 additional years Vlad spent in exile, plotting, planning, mastering military tactics, and political maneuvering. In 1456, with Hungarian backing finally secured, he seized the Wallachian throne. Vlad's coronation feast in 1456 should have marked celebration. Instead, it became the template for everything following. He extended invitations to the boyar families, the very nobility who had orchestrated his father's assassination and buried his brother breathing. Hundreds arrived in their ceremonial finest, believing they came to pledge loyalty to their new prince. The great hall gleamed with decoration. Wine flowed without restraint. Musicians played. The atmosphere suggested reconciliation, a new beginning for Wallachia. Then, mid-feast, Vlad rose and posed a simple question: how many princes of Wallachia have you witnessed rise and fall? The elder boyars answered with pride: 7, 10. Some claimed memory of a dozen different rulers. They boasted of their survival, their political acumen, their ability to outlast any prince who occupied the throne. They were demonstrating their value, their indispensability to whoever ruled. Vlad's smile appeared genuine. Then his order rang out. Every boyar who had answered faced immediate arrest. But observe the methodical mind at work. He didn't execute them. Not immediately. Instead, he divided them into categories based on age and physical condition. The older ones, the architects of his family's destruction, faced impalement immediately outside the palace walls. Not swift execution. The stakes were positioned with careful precision to avoid vital organs, ensuring death would arrive slowly across hours or days. Their screams provided the auditory backdrop for what transpired next. The younger, more physically capable boyars and their families were stripped of their noble garments and force-marched 50 miles northward to the ruins of Poenary Castle. There they received a choice that wasn't truly a choice: rebuild the fortress with bare hands or perish. For months they hauled stones up the mountainside, working until hands bled, until their fine clothes disintegrated, until exhaustion claimed them. Most died during construction. The survivors? They never recovered. Vlad had effectively erased the old nobility, replacing them with a new class who owed everything to him and existed in absolute terror of his displeasure. This transcended mere revenge. It was systematic dismantling of the power structure that had rendered Wallachia vulnerable. And it revealed something crucial about Vlad's psychology. He didn't simply demand obedience. He required breaking people so completely that obedience became their only conceivable response. Yet this remained domestic politics. The boyars were Wallachian. What Vlad executed next would send tremors across empires. In 1459, Sultan Mehmed II, the same Mehmed who had been Vlad's childhood companion, dispatched envoys to Wallachia demanding annual tribute that Vlad's father had agreed to pay. The demand carried an additional insult. Vlad must present himself personally in Constantinople to renew his oath of vassalage. The envoys arrived anticipating the usual political theater, perhaps negotiation, maybe counter-proposals. What they received was a preview of damnation. When they entered Vlad's court and refused to remove their turbans, a legitimate religious custom in Ottoman protocol, Vlad asked them to explain their tradition. They did, probably relieved he seemed interested in understanding rather than offended. Vlad nodded thoughtfully. Then words emerged that must have frozen their blood. "I respect a man who honors his faith so completely. Permit me to help you honor it eternally." He ordered his guards to nail the turbans directly to their skulls. Consider the precision of that cruelty. He didn't kill them. He mutilated them in a manner both symbolically loaded and medically calculated to ensure they'd survive the journey back to Constantinople. They became walking messages, their screams echoing across the countryside as they fled back to the Sultan. When Mehmed received his envoys, men he dispatched in good faith, now permanently disfigured and driven half-mad by pain, he understood immediately. This wasn't the childhood friend he remembered. This was something new, something that had absorbed Ottoman lessons in terror and evolved them beyond even Ottoman imagination. War became inevitable. But before that war arrived, Vlad had more messages to transmit. Here's what most fail to grasp about impalement. It wasn't merely execution. It was engineering. The common image, a stake driven straight through the torso, would produce almost instant death. That defeats the entire purpose. Vlad's method possessed far greater sophistication. Based on contemporary medical analyses of descriptions and surviving Ottoman accounts, here's the actual procedure. First, the victim was positioned face down. The stake, carefully selected, rounded at the tip, thoroughly oiled, was inserted through the rectum. But here's the critical detail. Insertion occurred at a calculated angle designed to miss all major organs and blood vessels. The victim was then gradually raised upright, and gravity completed the work. Over hours, sometimes days, their own body weight would force the stake progressively upward through their torso. The path avoided the heart, lungs, and major arteries. In documented cases, the stake would eventually emerge through the shoulder or chest, yet the victim could survive up to 3 days. Why this method? Because Vlad grasped something modern psychological warfare experts now confirm. Witnessing prolonged suffering proves exponentially more traumatizing than witnessing quick death. A battlefield beheading horrifies but concludes swiftly. Impalement was performance art lasting days, complete with screams audible across entire valleys. Yet the physical act comprised only one component. The true genius, if we can employ such a perverted term, lay in the staging. When Vlad impaled victims, he did so in public squares, along major thoroughfares, outside city gates, anywhere that would maximize visibility. He understood that word of mouth and rumor would multiply the psychological impact far beyond the actual victim count. One impalement witnessed by 100 people created 100 storytellers, each spreading the tale to hundreds more. And he refined the symbolism constantly. Stakes varied in height by rank, peasants near the ground, nobles elevated, the highest reserved for enemy commanders. This created grotesque visual hierarchy, reinforcing his message. Everyone occupies a place in my world, and everyone suffers according to their station. In some accounts, he arranged impaled victims in geometric patterns, circles, stars, concentric rings. This wasn't random sadism. It demonstrated control. It proclaimed, "I possess such power that I can transform human suffering into artistry." Sultan Mehmed II had finally exhausted his patience. By early 1462, Vlad had not only refused tribute, but launched raids deep into Ottoman territory south of the Danube. In one particularly brutal campaign, he crossed into Ottoman lands with a modest force and, according to his own letter to the Hungarian king, killed over 23,000 people. Mehmed, who had conquered Constantinople at 21, who had crushed rebellion after rebellion, decided to personally handle the Wallachian problem. Spring 1462 saw him assemble an army estimated between 60,000 and 90,000 men. Even conservative estimates place it at more than triple Wallachia's entire military-age male population. This wasn't invasion, it was extermination. Vlad possessed perhaps 20 to 30,000 men total, many of them peasant conscripts with minimal training. A conventional battle would constitute massacre. So Vlad executed what he'd been planning since childhood. He refused to offer them conventional battle. As the Ottoman army entered Wallachia, they discovered nothing. Empty villages, poisoned wells, burned fields. Every potential food and water source had been systematically eliminated. Vlad had ordered his own people to abandon their homes and retreat into forests and mountains, taking livestock with them. The Ottoman supply lines stretched longer. Then the night raids commenced. Vlad had trained specialized units in guerrilla warfare. Small groups, perhaps 50 to 100 men, would strike Ottoman camps in the dead of night, killing sentries, setting fires, vanishing before organized response could form. But the masterpiece arrived on the night of June 17, 1462. Vlad had learned from captured Ottoman soldiers that Sultan Mehmed himself was camped near Targovist with his personal guard. This opportunity would never return. Vlad personally led approximately 10,000 men in what became known as the night attack. Under darkness as cover, they infiltrated the massive Ottoman camp with one objective: kill the Sultan. The Wallachians wore captured Ottoman uniforms and knew sufficient Turkish to sow confusion. They set fire to tents, stampeded horses, and specifically targeted the camp section where the Sultan's pavilion stood. They came within yards of Mehmed himself. But the Janissaries held, forming a defensive circle around their leader. After hours of close-quarters combat, Vlad realized he couldn't break through. He ordered retreat, and his men vanished back into the night. The Ottoman casualties were modest, perhaps 2,000 killed. But the psychological damage was catastrophic. The Sultan, in the midst of his own army, had nearly been assassinated by a vastly outnumbered enemy. Mehmed's commanders were rattled. His soldiers were exhausted. Then they reached the capital and witnessed what Vlad had been preparing. No written description can fully capture what Mehmed's army encountered approaching Targovist in late June 1462. But we can attempt it. Imagine you're an Ottoman soldier marching through scorched earth for weeks. You're hungry, exhausted, jumpy from constant night raids. As you approach the Wallachian capital, the smell strikes first. If you've ever encountered a dead animal rotting in summer heat, multiply that by thousands. Then add the sweet, sickening odor of decomposing human flesh. Then you perceive the stakes. The first one, then 10, then 100, then you realize there is no end. Contemporary accounts claim the field of impaled bodies extended nearly 2 miles in length. Modern historians debate the exact number. Ottoman sources claim 10,000, Wallachian sources claim up to 20,000. The truth likely rests between 15 and 20,000 impaled bodies. But here's what makes your skin crawl. This wasn't random. The stakes were arranged in precise geometric patterns, concentric circles radiating outward, height-ordered rows. In some sections, they formed star patterns visible from elevated ground. Vlad had spent weeks, possibly months, preparing this. Some of the bodies had been dead for weeks. Others had been impaled more recently. And some, according to multiple sources, were still alive. The Byzantine chronicler Leonikos Chalkikondyles wrote that the moaning of the dying could be heard across the entire field. The Ottoman troops, hardened veterans, reportedly began vomiting. Some refused to advance. Others started deserting in the night. And at the center, on the tallest stake, stood Hamza Pasha, a high-ranking Ottoman commander. His body, dressed in military finery, was positioned directly facing the Sultan's approach. Sultan Mehmed II stopped his horse and stared in silence. His reported response: "It is not possible to deprive of his country a man who has done such great deeds." This wasn't praise, it was recognition that he faced something he didn't fully comprehend. Within days, Mehmed ordered general retreat. The most powerful military force in the world had been turned back, not by military defeat, but by sheer psychological warfare. Vlad the Impaler had triumphed. But here's what they didn't grasp. Vlad couldn't turn it off. The methods that defeated the Ottomans didn't cease with the Ottomans. By late 1462, Vlad was impaling Wallachian merchants for price gouging, boyars for suspected disloyalty, entire villages for minor infractions. The tool he'd forged had become his only tool for everything. His political position deteriorated rapidly. His brother Radu, backed by Ottoman gold, positioned himself as the sane alternative. Hungarian support evaporated. By November 1462, just months after his greatest triumph, Vlad was forced to flee into Hungarian territory. And here's the bitter irony. He was imprisoned by his supposed ally, King Matthias Corvinus of Hungary. He spent 12 years in captivity, not brutal imprisonment, but house arrest in comfortable quarters. He even married and fathered children. In 1476, opportunity returned. Vlad reclaimed his throne in November. He had perhaps 2 months to rule. In December 1476 or January 1477, Vlad was killed in battle against Ottoman forces. His head was severed, preserved in honey, and sent to Constantinople as proof of death. After everything, the terror, the impalement, the psychological warfare, Vlad ended as a trophy in the capital of the empire he'd fought his entire life. His body was allegedly buried at Snaga Monastery. Excavations in the 1930s discovered a tomb, but it was empty. To this day, no one knows where Vlad's remains rest. So what do we make of this chronicle? In Romania, Vlad is celebrated as a national hero who preserved independence. To the rest of the world, especially after Bram Stoker's Dracula, Vlad became synonymous with supernatural evil, which lets us off the hook. It's easier to think of him as a monster than to confront the real horror. Everything Vlad did was human. He wasn't born a monster. He was created by a system that taught him power flows through terror, that survival requires absolute ruthlessness. The forest of the impaled wasn't madness. It was applied psychology. The night attacks weren't random violence. They were precision military strategy. And here's what should keep you awake. It worked. Against impossible odds, using calculated terror, Vlad turned back an empire. The question isn't whether Vlad was evil. That's self-evident. The question is, what does it reveal about human nature that this method was so effective? And what other calculated horrors are hiding in history's shadows, waiting to teach us lessons we'd rather not learn?